hi, this is months and months of music, and we're having kind of a crash course in banjo, and this is kind of cool. It's kind of going over all the things that you would kind of practice if you were kind of first starting out on banjo and kind of getting used to working around the instrument. And one thing would be all the parts, just so you know what all the parts are. The big part here is kind of the head or the body, and actually the drum head is normally called the head. So we got body, kind of the head. You'll see these little things that kind of hold the rim of the head on. Those are called the brackets, and the back of it right here is called the resonator, actually on the back side. Then we kind of have our neck. We got a head. Got our tuners, kind of for our strings here, and also for our fifth string, kind of midway. The little white piece right there near the head is called the nut. And then these silver lines are called the frets, and you'll have fret dots to kind of help you find them pretty quickly, kind of a 3, 5, 7, and then 10, and then the double dot is normally the 12 on banjo. And then down here we have kind of a bridge, which kind of lays on the head, and then we have a tail piece at the very end, and then you'll have little pieces to kind of attach your strap to too. And the strings on banjo are a little bit different. Actually, I'm originally a guitar player, so I think of everything kind of relative to the guitar. So banjo is kind of like guitar if you took the E string and retuned it to a D, and took the A string and tuned it up to a higher G, which is crazy, actually, re-entrant G. But your string name's actually kind of from the first string, which is the one closest to the ground, to the fifth string, which is the one furthest from the ground, kind of first string, second, third, fourth, fifth, are normally tuned to a D and a B and a G and a D and then another G. So this is kind of like bluegrass 5-string banjo tuning. There are lots of other ways to kind of tune the banjo. That's kind of a Scruggs style tuning. And what you may want to do, actually, if you're just first starting out, is kind of taking some really easy exercises just to kind of go over the strings. And normally on banjo, we're using our thumb, our index finger, and our middle finger. And I don't normally use finger picks, but you're welcome to if that helps you kind of get more of a brighter sound. I have pretty good nails, so I don't normally worry about that. But one thing to kind of start off with, just kind of going through the strings and kind of some rhythm exercises, could be to kind of take the thumb and just kind of play through those open strings and then kind of call them out, kind of that D, B, G, D, G, because you want to know those strings like the back of your hand. Or you could even take one of your other fingers, kind of the index finger, just to kind of try that kind of single note idea, or middle finger even, just to kind of get used to moving around with the fingers on the strings. And a really good setup to kind of start off with, actually, normally with the right hand, what we do on banjo is some things called rolls. And a really good roll to start with is just kind of forward roll, where you take the thumb and kind of put them on the third string G, index finger goes on the second string B, and the middle finger goes on the first string D. So it's kind of the top, or the skinny. Well, this is always confusing with banjo. I always think of the towards the ground as kind of high, but it's always weird because our fifth string is normally kind of our highest note, actually, with the open strings. But a cool roll to start with is forward roll, where you do thumb on the third string, and then index, and then middle, kind of going G and then B and then D is the notes we're playing, kind of third string, second string, first string. So you may want to just take that idea and do that a lot, and that's called a forward roll. We're normally kind of doing more roll kind of ideas on the banjo. Or another roll that can be cool is something called a reverse roll, where we start out with the middle finger, and then the index, and then the thumb. So it's kind of an MIT idea. So you want to practice both of those. And actually, one of my favorite rolls for banjo, actually, especially in 4/4, is something called forward or reverse, which gets you to practice both of those rolls actually in kind of a cool way, where you start out with the thumb, index, middle with the forward roll, then you take your thumb and go to the fifth string, and then you come back with the middle, index, thumb with a reverse roll, and then you add in another index. So it's a little weird. It's kind of like thumb, index, middle, thumb on the fifth string, and then coming back middle, index, thumb, back to index. So thumb, index, middle, thumb, middle, index, thumb, middle, or index, which is kind of weird because your thumb is kind of moving between the third string and the fifth string. And that can be a really cool roll to kind of start out with. There's a million songs you can play with that one roll. So you may want to spend some time practicing that. Thumb, index, middle, thumb, middle, index, thumb, index, thumb, index, middle, thumb, middle, index, thumb, index, kind of working that forward roll. And a lot of times what I like to do is kind of start off with kind of some things for the right hand. The left hand, though, your index finger is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. And what I like doing is little 2-finger combinations to kind of get started. And you could work any right hand fingers with this. It's kind of focusing on the left hand as an idea. But you could take first finger and go to the first fret on the D, kind of that first string, and then go to second finger on the second fret and kind of work that as a combination, kind of 2 fingers, kind of a 1 and 2 idea. And there's lots of different 2-finger combinations. You could do 1 to 2 as an idea, or you could take 1 to 3 as an idea, or you could take 1 to 4 as an idea, or you could take 2 to 3 as an idea, or you could take 2 to 4 as an idea, or you could take 3 to 4 as an idea. And I'm kind of lining my fingers up by the frets, but you could even take those ideas and then try and move them by string. Actually, that's something I call climbing, where you do first string, second string, third string, fourth string. And you can even find some cool ways to kind of weave yourself up the neck. So you want to kind of play around with kind of taking one left hand finger and kind of working it. Or you could do some things called hammer-ons, which is kind of where you play the first note and then let your second finger just go down on the string to carry the sound. And that's called a hammer-on, because you're kind of hammering out the sound with the second finger. And even doing that as a climbing idea can be kind of a cool idea. Little warm-up exercises. Or you could do pull-offs, where you kind of take the second finger and let them kind of fall off the string, kind of straight towards the ground, to kind of get back to first finger. So kind of a 2-1 pull-off could be cool. Or you could even mix that up and take different combinations. Or you could even work these from the open string, actually kind of working the first fret as a pull-off, second fret as a third fret, or pull-offs, or hammer-ons. So you may want to kind of play around with just some left-hand stuff to get started. And then your chords, actually, a lot of times I'll jump into chords so we can actually be playing some tunes. And the cool thing about banjo is all your open strings together is a G major chord. So that's kind of a cool thing. And actually, we'll end up talking more about how you move that around too later on. And then from the G, a lot of times I'm kind of digging on a Stand By Me thing today. So we can start out on G major, and then from there we go to an E minor chord, where you do second fret on the D string or fourth string D, second fret on the first string D, and that sounds like E minor chord. And you may want to do that with second finger and third finger, because that'll kind of set you up for our next chord, where you take the first finger and add it in on the second string first fret, and that sounds a C major chord. And then from there we can go to a D major chord. Actually, there's 2 really cool ways to play D. You could do it as a regular D major chord, where you do first finger on the G second, second finger on the B third, pinky on the high E or the D string, first string D. It's kind of a fourth fret, so it's kind of a little diagonal shape, kind of 2, 3, 4 for a D major. Or you may dig on a D7 chord, where you do first finger on the B string, first fret, second finger on the G string, second fret, kind of third string G there. It's kind of a D7 idea. And what can be kind of cool for this particular song is kind of working the forward reverse roll that way. So you could do your G chord, and another G, and then we go to E minor, and another E minor, and then we go to our C, and then we go to our D, and then we're back to G. So it might be kind of a cool thing to kind of practice, kind of go through it too. When the night has G come, E minor, and the land is dark, sea and the moon is the D only light we'll see. Now that's really tricky doing the roll for you. Actually, when you're first starting out on banjo, you could even do this as kind of a downstroke idea, kind of 4 downs on each chord. So now I'm kind of taking the index finger and just working as a strum idea. And that can be kind of a cool thing to kind of work on banjo. C, D, G. Just kind of get more left-hand practice, kind of working the chords. Or one of my favorite strum patterns is down, down, up, up, down, up. So you can even take your index finger and kind of try it as a strum. Now, like I said, I'm not using finger picks. This would be different with finger picks. So you might want to try it as a thumb idea. Kind of digging on the finger picks. But you'd have a G, E1, C, D, Stand By Me is actually in the key of A major. And if we did it in the key of A major, between those two versions, you'd actually be playing every major chord you'd pretty much be seeing. Now, one way to play an A major chord on the banjo is to take the first finger and kind of do it across the entire second fret. And this is a little weird. You may want to leave the fifth string out or retune it. Actually, sometimes it can be cool to kind of take that string, if you're doing something in the key of A, and retune it up to an A note to kind of support that A. But something else you could do is kind of adjust the roll to do the D string instead of the G string. So now I'm going thumb, index, middle, but on that other thumb note, I'm doing the fourth string and then coming back first, second, third, second. So kind of a G or a 3, 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3, 2 is kind of adjusting the roll for the A major. Another way to play the A major would be doing first finger on the second string, 5th fret, second finger on the G string, 6th fret, third finger on the D7, and the pinky on the high E7. If you kind of dig on that, it's kind of a 4-finger A. And then from the A, we'd be going to an F sharp minor chord. This is kind of like introduction to weird, strange bars with Bunsen. But you could take your first finger and do that first or that second fret bar, and then third finger on the 4th string, 4th fret, pinky on the 1st string, 4th fret. It would kind of be a really F sharp minor chord on the banjo. And then from there, you'd probably want to use your regular D chord, kind of that diagonal D. And then we would be going to an E major chord on the banjo, where you do first finger on the 3rd string, 1st fret, second finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and kind of working just, and then third finger on the 1st string, 2nd fret. It's kind of our E major chord. So you could kind of adjust it, and that would actually help out if you were trying to play along with the recording to work it in that key. So you'd have the A major, or A major, and then F sharp minor, another F sharp minor, and then we got our D, and then we got our E major, and then we go back to the A, and another A. So we want to kind of play around with that. Actually, if you leave that first string open, it makes it an E7 chord, which will give you a lot of bite actually back to the A if you kind of dig on that. So you could try that with your roll, kind of adjusting for that 4th string instead of the 5th string idea. F sharp minor, D, E, A. So we want to kind of play around with that too and kind of work the tune that way. Trickier, but that way you kind of got your bars are actually movable shapes. And this is what's cool, is that A major shape that we're doing, kind of 5th, 6th, and 7th fret, really could be any chord. We just have to move that shape around. And the F sharp minor bar actually is the same deal. So if you start seeing some really weird chords in banjo, a lot of times it can be really handy to know something called the chromatic scale, which is basically all the colors of our rainbow actually is chromatic scale. It's where you play every single note on the string. And so we could kind of work that on the D string, actually kind of going 4th string here, kind of our lowest note on the banjo is the 4th string open. And what a chromatic scale is where you play every single note and you don't leave anybody out. So it's basically taking the open string and playing every single fret all the way up the D string. And when you get to 12th fret, actually you're back on the name of the string. So a D open and a D on the 12th fret are actually still both D notes. And with a chromatic scale, though, in music, we kind of use the first 7 letters of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we start over again. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But then there are these things called sharps and flats that get thrown in. And what a sharp is where you go 1 fret higher than the regular note. So if you got open D, and you go to 1st fret on the D, that's something called D sharp. And then if you go to 2nd fret, that's a E note. Randomly, E's are magic and go straight to F's. And B's do too, actually. B's go straight to C. But then if we go to 4th fret, that's a F sharp note. 5th fret's a G. 6th fret's a G sharp. 7th fret's an A. And then 8th fret's an A sharp. And then 9th fret's kind of our B. And then 10th fret's our C. And then we got a C sharp on 11th fret. And then we got a D on the 12th fret. So you got D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D. And then something else that we use in music is some things called flats. And what a flat is the reverse of a sharp. So D on the 12th fret is a D note, and you go back to 11th fret, we could call that D flat. So it's kind of another name for C sharp. So you got D on the 12th, D, and then we got 11th fret for D flat, and then 10 for C, 9 for B, 8 for B flat, 7 for A, 6 for A flat, 5 for G, 4 for G flat, 3 for F, and then 2nd fret E, 1st fret for E flat, and then we're back to D. And that kind of gives you a way to find any note you're looking for on the banjo. It's kind of that D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, and then the D, D flat, C, B, B flat, A flat, G, G flat, F, E, E flat, B. And that's all 12 notes you'll play on every instrument known to man. But what can be cool with those shapes, though, if you take that A major we were doing from 5, 6, 7, what can be kind of cool is to move that around. And whatever note you're playing on the D string, that's what chord it is. So right now we got an A major because we're playing an A note on the D string 7th fret. But if we went back a fret, that would be an A flat major. Back another fret would be a G major. Oh, that's another way to play G. That's cool. And then if you go down one fret from there, that's an F sharp major. Down another fret would be an F major. And you can kind of slide it down one more fret, and that would actually give you the E major shape. So that's actually what that is. It's kind of a movable E shape in a way. You know, so you may want to kind of take that, and even with the roll, adjust the D string. That can be a cool thing to kind of practice through all your major chords. It's just taking that one shape and moving it around. Now another shape actually that can be kind of cool too is the bar shape actually for the A. But kind of going over the D string a little bit more, you could kind of take the F sharp minor shape as kind of every minor chord by moving that around too. So whatever note you're playing on the D, that's what minor chord is. So this is our F sharp minor. If we go over one fret, that's a G minor. Then we got a G sharp minor, and then an A minor, and then an A sharp minor, and then a B minor. It's just whatever note you're playing on the D string. That's what chord that is. So that would be kind of a really cool exercise to take that shape and kind of move it around even with your roll too. So it's kind of an E minor shape but moved around actually. So you may want to play around with that too. And I'm kind of leaving the 5th string out for a lot of that actually. Sometimes that gets really tricky with 5th string because normally we don't fret 5th string quite as much. Or you could kind of work that other bar shape actually, kind of that 2nd fret bar. And that shape for the A major is actually working off a G string for kind of the note that makes the chord. So if you did a chromatic scale on the G string, you'd have open G, and then G sharp, and then A, and then A sharp, and then B, and then C. Whoa, C's on 5th fret. And then C sharp, and then a D. Hey, D's on 7th fret. And then D sharp, and then we got an E, and then an F, and then an F sharp, and then a G. And then if we brought it down, we'd have G, G flat, F, E, E flat, D, D flat, C, B, B flat, A flat, and G. So another way to kind of work that G major idea we were just doing is you can work some of the chords kind of with the bar. So you got the G that's the open, we got our E minor shape. But another way to play the C would be going to a 5th fret as a bar, and then 7th fret as a bar would be the D chord. So if you had to work it as just a one finger thing, if you wanted to, after that E minor, it might be kind of cool. So if we tried that with our roll, then we have kind of that G, or you could even do the bar for the G, E minor, C, shape from 8, 9, 10 for a C chord, and then 10, 11, 12 for a D chord, and then you do that at the G. So it's kind of cool too. G, E minor, C, D, G, idea. Actually, we got the A major from the 5, 6, 7 to the F sharp minor. But then for the D chord, you couldn't do that as kind of that 7th fret bar, and then do the E major as a 9th fret bar. Kind of working off of those other shapes. So you have the A, F sharp minor, 7th fret bar, 9th fret bar, and then A, kind of building on that. A has come, F sharp minor, the land is done, and the D moon is the E only, night will A, C. So that might be kind of cool too. And that's basically kind of practicing through all the major chords that you'll kind of see on banjo. There's a couple other weird shapes though, actually, like the D major shape, the regular D major that we were talking about. You could even kind of take your 3rd finger and go to the 4th string, 4th fret with that shape, and then now you've got a movable shape that kind of works off of a B string for a major. Kind of D major, D sharp major, E major, F major, F sharp major, G major, G sharp, A sharp. Your main major chord shapes is kind of working those 3. So you may want to kind of play around with that. It might be kind of cool to, or try and find some different places to play it too. Yeah, that'd be cool. Kind of use those shapes in chromatic scale and kind of find some other places to play some of the other chords. But that's my basic crazy crash course into banjo playing, kind of working that. And randomly, if you're a guitar player, most of these chord shapes that we're working actually is kind of compensating on the 1st string by 2 frets. So if you're used to like a D shape, for instance, on the guitar, what you could do is kind of take that 2nd fret on the 1st string, and now you have to add 2 frets to get the regular D shape. So now that's a little weird. Or for instance, if you're familiar with a G major chord on the guitar, you'd have 3rd fret on the high E string on the top 4 strings. If you take that and slide it over 2 frets, that's another way you can kind of work your G. So it's like you're adding 2 frets to whatever happens on the 1st string for your chord shapes. So if you took the top 4 strings on the guitar for a C, and then kind of added in the 2nd fret on the 1st string to compensate for that, that's your C chord. And for the A, actually, if you're familiar with the A major chord on the top 4 strings of the guitar, it's like taking your 1st string and then adding in 2 frets. So that's where that 1st finger bar A comes from. Okay. But just an aside, actually, it could be very, very cool to be able to look at guitar chords and know what they are, especially if you're jamming with other people. So even if you are a banjo player exclusively, or the way you're thinking about yourself, you may want to go and kind of look at some examples of guitar stuff, because normally there's a guitar player that you can kind of follow if you're playing in a group. So it's very cool to know some guitar chords too, or what they look like at least if you're playing banjo. So best of luck!